Welcome to the Lessons Learned podcast, a podcast reflecting on the lessons we've learned and those we're still in the process of learning. I'm Komal, your host. I'm an interviewer, investor, and someone who has lived a lot of life in a short time. I built this podcast as a place for us to reflect, to be together, and to learn from one another. Let's get into it. Welcome to this episode of Lessons in Resilience. I'm really looking forward to our conversation today with Hitha Palepu. She is an incredible woman who is focused on supporting, encouraging more literacy in folks, getting excited about intellectualism, all these different pieces, alongside being a pharma executive. And so when I thought about talking to folks about what it means to be multipassionate, Hitha was like so high on my list of folks I wanted to chat with. She's also been in my corner, a huge supporter of my work, someone who does incredible work in the world as it stands. And we're waiting for Hitha to join us. Hello. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Have you guys ended up back in New York yet? Are you guys still okay?
Office.
Well, hello, home office. How does it feel to be home?
God, it's so good. I'm just gonna move you around and get some better light.
Sounds good. I know. I'm going to actually move you a little bit so that we don't get an echo, because I have you on a surface that likes to echo. So just bear with me for a sec, fam. But when did you guys end up back in New York?
We came back. So Sri and I came back without the boys for 4 days to just clean and get the handyman over to get the air conditioning, all that stuff. And then went back, stayed home for a day for my mom's birthday, so that I was running around making sure mom had the best birthday because she had taken such good care of us for the past 4 months. And then came back on Sunday. So it's been over a week and a day now.
Wow. So how does it feel to be back in the city?
So New York is definitely different. And I think it will be for quite a while, but home is home, and the boys have their playroom again and their rooms, and Rocky isn't sleeping in a travel crib. We have a proper changing table for him, and Ro has all his old toys and is so excited. And we found a very safe outdoor camp for him for a few hours. So he went to art camp today, and the counselor was texting me and telling him what a joy Ro is and how much fun he's having. And I'm like, oh, thank God.
That's so good. You're they're still socialized. This is good.
Yeah.
The past few months haven't messed with
played with another kid in 4 months. I feel so bad.
Oh my goodness. That is amazing though. I'm glad that you guys are back home and safe. And it's interesting to see what things are going to look like the next few months. And we've talked about this before at length, but I want to get to your story now. You and I have been Instagram friends for a while, and we actually got to connect over quarantine, finally, digitally, over while you were at your parents'. And I got to learn so much more about you. And something that I find so interesting about you, Hitha, is you are a pharma executive, but then you also have this beautiful online platform that you create, which, as I was saying in the beginning, promotes literacy and staying informed and education, all these different pieces. So can you share a little bit of how you started with your online presence and what it was like to sort of navigate being an executive, being in this space, but then also wanting to cultivate and create an online blog and presence?
Yeah. So you were seeing I started taking off 10 years after I had been creating content online. So, guys, it's a long game. But basically, when I first started working for my father in the industry, I decided to start a blog because everybody was, and I was reading them. And it was a hobby I could maintain while I was traveling constantly. So obviously, your lives merged together, and I started writing about packing and travel on my blog because I'm in a suitcase 3 weeks out of every month, and this is my life. And I started publishing travel and packing content that resembled more what people were actually traveling and packing for, not the quit your job and sell your things, live out of a but I got a business trip, but I'm tacking on a weekend with my girlfriends, and how do I pack for that in a carry-on? Or I have like a multi-stop trip. How do I pack for that? And like, how do I stay organized? And that was my life. So it was when I started publishing content like that, that my blog took off. I think for my first brand online was Packing Girl. Fully double Packing Girl. I did video series. I did a curated box with quarterly full of my favorite packing accessories. I literally wrote a book about packing.
That's amazing. I didn't even know this part of your journey. This is so great.
And then after my book came out, after I had promoted it, I'm like, I'm really tired talking about packing. My passion wasn't packing, though. I do find incredible satisfaction in like a perfectly packed and organized suitcase, or in the case of COVID, like packing up my car where all my stuff is in there and I can that also feeling. But my passion was really helping women save time and energy on the things they have to do, so they have time and energy to do the things they actually want to do. That is what continues to drive me today. And so the blog did pivot from packing content to more lifestyle content. So I had an aggressive publishing schedule that I don't even know how I kept up with it, where it was like a recipe on Monday, some kind of like work or productivity post on Tuesday, an outfit that you could actually wear and people won't be like, why is she wearing a costume? Travel content Thursday, and a book review Friday.
That's insane. How did you, well, we're going to actually get into your productivity stuff later. So we're going to leave that for down the line in the conversation.
But then, and that there was about a year and a half where I was active with our, we were both also angel investors, and this is another thing Komal and I definitely bond in, but I was active with our portfolio companies. I was winding down a startup that I had founded kind of in my in-between pharma period. And I started helping my dad with this new company. But at the end of 2018 is when my father asked me to come formally on board as CEO and help fundraise and develop strategy for the company. And at that point, I really had to say, the blog's gotta go. Like, I can't maintain it at the level I want to. Like, I wasn't willing to sacrifice and downgrade the content or quality in order to keep it up. And so I kind of took a bit of a break on social media, on creating content in general. And I was in my first trimester of my pregnancy with Rocky. So I was like, if I wasn't working, I was like in bed sleeping. It was rough.
Those were the two sides of it.
It was, but that's when I also was like reading a lot of news and going like, I want people to talk about this with. And my husband and father are bored of me sending me articles and being like, did you read it? Can we talk about it? Did you read it? Can we? So they were just like, stop talking to us about this. I decided that, and I was like, well, I'll just publish them on Instagram and maybe people will read it. And that's how 5 Smart Reads got started. And that quickly snowballed. And I have to think that it was spending that 10 years of blogging and knowing how to tell a story, have a point of view, but encourage conversation, and having the discipline to just churn out content that allowed me to be consistent and be highly focused and know what would work with 5 Smart Reads. That would, I had the ethic and the foundation to sort of handle its kind of explosive growth. And that has been, you know, the platform, in addition to my day job, that I'm very focused on now. The podcast came from it as well, which has been amazing. And there's now, I moved all my newsletters and some kind of content I'd been creating over to Substack. So all my old newsletters are there. A lot of my Q&As are there. And I will be publishing like essays of things that interest me. And I can get back into more long form writing again, which is really fun because people ask me, it's like, what did you think of Indian Matchmaker? Which was, what do you think of what's happening with COVID and this sort of anti-masker movement? I'd like to be able to have like a place to write in depth and that people can reference or share that's rooted in science. In COVID case, and for Indian matchmaking to be able to have a place where you can discuss it, where it lives somewhere, versus me screenshotting DMs and resharing and spending that time, because after spending a weekend completely off my phone, I am like, oh, I want more of that.
Yes. And I feel like we create content at such a high pace when it comes to Instagram that you're right, we don't necessarily have a great place to archive, to have it all live. So I'll again come to software later, but before we move on from origin story, did it ever feel like your passions were incongruent with each other? Like this blogging aspect of you and then the pharma executive part of your brain? Because I think for a lot of folks who might be listening, they are multi-passionate in this way where it's like artist and focused in STEM or in business, but wanting to play a little bit more in a creative space. How did you reconcile those two parts? Was there ever sort of conflict that you experienced when you were trying to figure out where you wanted to spend more of your time?
Never conflict, because I think this is how I've always been, and I'm very grateful for having parents that encouraged it. And really, my mother, give her all the credit for this of why I am the way I am, because never was a point where she had kind of said no. She was like, okay, let's talk about how we'll make it work and prioritize and schedule, and how do we carve out time for it. If you're going to do something, do it, with your full effort and with your full passion, but make a commitment. So we're going to do it this long. And that kind of carried with me to college, where most Indian parents want their children, South Asian parents want their children to have some sense of security postgraduate. So my parents were said, we will pay for college if you make sure you get a technical degree of some kind. You can major in whatever else you want on top of it, but you will have a science degree of some sort that will give you some kind of job security that will, for them, they were just like, you have been raised with like a sense of privilege and a certain lifestyle. And to make sure you can maintain that long after we're gone on your own. So
yes,
grateful.
Pragmatism kicks in.
Exactly. And I think I'm going to do the same thing with my kids. I'm like, otherwise they have to give me like a very full business plan of why going to, what it's going to do for them. But I digress. So I majored in biochemistry and history in university. And I think that kind of, I'd always been, I think, dual brained in nature, equal parts technical and analytical as I am creative and artistic. And that really, I think, formed so many neural pathways that multi-hyphenate life is always the one for me. And there was never an option of ever doing one thing.
And I love that, because I feel like society tells us we can't be all those things. But I also felt this in university and in high school. Like, I appreciated all subjects. Like, it was like physics was my jam and English was my jam. But we live in a way where specialization and focus on the one thing is what's promoted. But if I didn't have the spectrum of interests that I do, I wouldn't be the well-rounded human that I am today. So what advice do you have for people who might be feeling like, how do I do both of these things? Or am I allowed to do both of these things? Sometimes we need permission from people, and this could be that permission that they get.
We are giving you permission. First and foremost, if you need permission, we are giving it to you. Take it. I go back to thinking about my childhood and like what made me happy as a kid, and going back into those things and exploring them a bit. And I think we're also so focused on how do we monetize everything we do and monetize our time. No. Like, we got to bring play back in and doing things just because we enjoy them, not because we're particularly good at them. I am an amateur crafter at best. Like, I would never put my stuff to like sell anywhere. And it's like, out of every 5 baby hats I make, maybe one is good enough to like and when they have a newborn. But I enjoy it. I enjoy doing something with my hands that has nothing to do with work, like either of our jobs. And I think that's really important to, like, as a good place to start, because doing something just for the sake of doing it will allow your brain to kind of turn off active voice and let your subconscious really come to the forefront, or you just quieted yourself that you can actually listen to what your soul is telling you. To, this is fun, this is great, more of this please. And you can actually hear what your body's trying, what your whole soul is trying to tell you.
And when it comes to resiliency, which that is like my jam, we know I'm a resilience educator. This is that magic spot where if we can cultivate those hobbies, if we can lean into pleasure, if we can lean into joy and coming back to, like you said, that childlike appreciation and wonder for things, we are going to be so much more better off when we face hard things, or when we need to head into quarantine and don't really know how to take downtime. It's those things that allow us to sort of expand through hardship. So thank you for sharing that aspect of things. Now, something that you're also like, I love your blog, even your old blog posts, when I check them out, I'm like, productivity hacks. I love productivity hacks. And when you were sharing around your blogging schedule in the early days, how did you stay on top of things? And was it like a unrelenting schedule that you were committed to, or were you able to build in and still optimize and be this high performer who was posting so much and leading the life of the executive? Was there a bucket for self-care and wellness in that part of things? No.
Not as it was. I really unrelenting. And it was like, I had one child, I had the blog, and I had my job. And at the time, the blog took up more of my time than the job. And that's why when the tables started to turn, I had to, and I was pregnant, I'm like, I gotta put this on pause to focus on, my growing family and my growing business. And I will figure out what's next for me with regards to content once I'm able to put that on pause. And I was scared though, because Hitha on the Go was such a big part of my identity. And it was mine. It was what I did myself. It wasn't the company my dad had founded that I was working for. And it wasn't my children, who, yes, they're mine, but they're also their own little people. And I am their caretaker. I am not defined. I don't want to be fully defined by my children, nor have them be fully defined by me. So it was sad, at least, to say, oh, I have to give this up for a bit. Now I do. I think I have a much better balance of a very relenting day job where I'm raising our Series A and developing a couple new clinical strategies. That's unrelenting.
Major.
But I'm also sharing content on a schedule that works for me. And I have plenty of time with my family. And I do have some downtime for myself. So a lot of it is when I am working, I have really been focused on putting my phone down at all costs and minimizing mindless scrolling as much as possible, or checking your phone for the sake of it, not because you actually have an important notification. So that has done wonders for me, where on the weekends, I leave my phone in a drawer in my bedroom. And if my father needs to get a hold of me, he can call my husband, or we also have cameras in our home. So he'll creepily speak into the camera, and then we FaceTime him.
Yeah.
And I carry a book with me instead. So I read 2 books this weekend, and I was like, this is amazing.
That's amazing. I need more of that. Once we're out of launch week, I'm like, I need to detox.
Yeah. And so there's that. I have a better, my coach calls it intuitive scheduling, which I love, but it's really checking in with yourself at the top of the day. Figure, how do I feel? Okay, what needs to get done, and when, based on how I'm feeling, is it the best to do these certain tasks? Which I think is really strong, because right now I am at the mercy of when certain doctors are available and when certain investors are available to speak. I can't really bucket it out where I only take calls on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I can't do that right now, but I can carve out time in between. If I have calls in the half hour in between, I can go, I can read through all the articles I bookmarked up and figure out what's right for 5 smart reads. And then if I have an hour chunk later in the day, I could go, okay, I can prep tomorrow's newsletter and actually write the summaries and get everything formatted and scheduled. And I mean, as a result now, I don't share as much as I used to on Instagram, but I think I'm a lot more purposeful about what I share. That feed posts matter. I hope that they have some kind of, there's reason or an intention or purpose behind them. And my stories are the same. There are moments where I'll be like, this is a really cute moment between the boys, so snap and share. But I'm also not just talking into the camera as much during the day unless I have something important to say. Or
yes. And would you talk about that process of going from that unrelenting everything, like all the time, to now finding this semblance of, dare we say, balance or integration, whatever words we want to use?
Well,
what helped you like prioritize or find this rhythm for yourself?
well, it was a mental health reckoning. I had I had postpartum depression with Roe, which was very scary, and I had it severely. So I was on an SSRI and weekly therapy, and I really had to like take a leave from the startup I was building for about a month in order to really focus on my health. And that's when I signed a book deal. So
as it happened.
So I don't think I took as good care of myself in that mental health chapter of my life. So with Rocky, I got prenatal depression, and I identified, because I'd been through it before, just in a postpartum sense, I was like, I know these symptoms, I know what I need to do. And thankfully, working for my father and us being in like a weird pause time, because we were in the middle of a LLC to a C Corp conversion, and we're just waiting for all the paperwork and all that to go through. Work wasn't super challenging. So I had that space to care for myself. I immediately started seeing a therapist again. And then that's when I carved out the time. That's when I said, time spent sitting in bed and reading a book while, Ro is at school and my husband is at work, and everything that needs to get done, like that will make me better for the work. Time spent sleeping in a little is great. Like time spent doing the things that just make me happy but aren't necessarily related to some kind of business ROI is important. It has my own personal return on investment. And that's when I made time in my day non-negotiable. So I do work out every day, and honestly, your workout videos are super motivating.
As are yours. Like, we motivate each other. This is so good.
And that's like what this is. It's like all about it. I meditate every day because I am a better person for it. And sometimes that is a 10-minute meditation sitting on my meditation cushion all by myself. And sometimes it's a 1-minute kids headspace that I do with Ro because off the walls. But it happens. It happens every day. I read every day because that is just, it gives me so much peace and calm. And then I either cook or needlepoint every day. These days it's cooking because we are no longer with my parents. But like putting my phone away and playing some good music and like listening to my kids, just watching them play while I whip up something is just really nice. And like, again, creating, not consuming, just, I think, fires up different parts of your brain that often are left dormant in our typical work day when we are following up or kind of on somebody else's agenda or responding to somebody else's agenda or kind of caring for all the stuff you have to do, that do something that's like really good for yourself. And cooking, I think, is fantastic for that because the act of cooking feeds my soul. And when I eat my own food, I'm significantly healthier, which I do need to prioritize like right now.
I do too. I realize like my gap that I've realized in my life in quarantine, because for me, like as we're launching our resilience program, The Next Right Step, it turns out quarantine was a great incubator for me to create this program and bring it into the world. But I've also noticed the gaps in my life, which for me is nutrition and cooking. And so once we've got this program out into the world, at like later in the summer, my goal is to like rebuild my relationship with my food.
Yeah.
Because right now we have an incredible, our cousin lives with us, Nathan, and he loves cooking and he's so damn good at it. And I'm here for it. But I'm like, I need to start rebuilding this into my habits. So in your quarantine experience, it's been insane for everybody. And I can also only imagine what it's like to have 2 children while in the midst of it, doing home teaching, all those things. And you were able to have support of your parents for a good chunk of time. But what gaps in your life came up for you in quarantine? Like what were both the silver linings and then the areas where you're like, oh shit, this kind of needs my attention?
Silver linings definitely were the time with my parents. Like we have a finite amount of time on the planet. My mom is almost 70. My father is in his 70s. I just don't know how much time I have left with them. So those 4 months were a gift. Like beyond anything else, just that time and like sitting down with them at the dining table every night. My husband was off watching whatever he wanted to watch, the kids asleep, and just sitting around and talking. Like those are some of my most cherished memories, and it fed my soul in such a way that it was incredible. Another thing was really the time with the boys, and definitely with Ro, who, like, Rocky is one and a pretty adaptable one, but watching him like learn how to crawl and then walk and then run in Philly was like really amazing, and having my parents being able to be there and see that as well was just very special. With Ro, it went from me seeing him, like giving him worksheets and doing things together and like reading to him so much, to all of a sudden sitting in a corner and like watching him read a book out loud to himself, and I'm like,
what magic is this?
what just happened? And him start doing like math worksheets and like actual math. And it was like probably a month and a half into quarantine that I said, I think Ro needs to be at a different school for kindergarten, regardless of what happens with COVID. Like, this child, I just got to know him so much better. Weird to say because he's my child, but like in our normal lives where I'm out a couple nights a week and I was always a little distracted. I was never really present with my children. It was really rough. I was marveling over my little human and going, oh, you are ready for so much more, child. So we changed the school in the middle.
That's amazing.
And it's whether it's remote or in person or some combination of both, I feel really strongly that this school is like the next best step, next right step for him. And to that point, like I saw how creative he was with art. And so when I knew we were coming back to the city and starting to look at places, I was like, I want art for him. And this is like I want to go to this camp. It's art and meditation and yoga. And I'm like,
do they have this for adults, please?
I want to go.
Yes.
Just I know him so much better now. So those are all that sense of really strong family connectivity that I would have never gotten if it hadn't been for quarantine. I am eternally grateful for. But I did put everybody else above me. And I think like being with your parents, I don't know if anyone else feels this way, but I regress to like my teenage self in a bit.
Especially in the house you grew up in.
Yeah.
You know, you can't help that regression.
Exactly. And so, but like I have children, so I can only regress so much. I'll have like the responsibility of my children. So it was a very weird mental space that I really couldn't, even in the 4 months, I never really got out of that funk in any kind of way. It was actually pretty bad and pretty weird. But that coming back here, like it just went away because I'm like, oh yeah, I'm also queen of this castle.
Yes, this is my casa. This is my house. I know this is where I thrive.
Yeah, it's like my mom and I kind of butt heads a bit, and I have to like stay back because she's alpha in her home and I get to be alpha here. So it is nice to be alpha.
That's amazing. I was just thinking of that because like my brother, they had their plumbing back up last month. So they had to move in with my parents as well. And so when I call home, like hearing like my nieces and nephews in the background and how joyful my parents are, like they're never going to get these next 4 months back until my brother and sister-in-law can move back into their place. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm having FOMO because I'm halfway across the country and miss my parents dearly and my whole family. But it is such a gift, that extra time with our parents, especially as they grow old and we get older, and can appreciate them and their friendship that much more. It's so, so nice. So I got a message yesterday from someone who is working full-time, work from home, 2 young children, trying to navigate like putting any time in the day for herself and what that looks like, especially looking at the fall and saying, I'm also going to turn into teacher soon again, as a mother, because this is something I can't speak to. I can only hypothesize about. Sure, if you were having those experiences with postpartum and prenatal depression, what would have enabled you to actually put these habits in place? Like, do you have any words for folks who are in that space of just unrelenting and the burnout's so close, but they have a little bit of grace period to like find ways for themselves every day?
Like, start with one thing. Don't jump into this very elaborate morning routine that could take a half hour to do, and if you miss it once, you beat yourself up over it, and then you just, that sense of like failure, you never pick it back up again. Start with one really like a micro habit. So whether it's like, I'm just going to put a glass of water on my bedside table, and first thing in the morning, I'm just going to drink it. Start with that. Then it's, I'm going to drink the water, and I'm just going to close my eyes and take 10 deep breaths, and then get out of bed. And then build some micro habits that give you some space and time, like in the routine. I'm very big on seizing the micro moments in the day. Like I think my education allowed me to read quickly, be able to pick something up when I put it down and whatnot. But this is something that almost anyone can cultivate. Like if you have 5 minutes in the day that your kids are giving you some peace, put down your phone and pick up a book. And whether you remember anything of that book doesn't matter, but the art of putting down this device that can cause like your cortisol levels to cause so much stress and anxiety for you, putting it down and picking something else up that you choose, it doesn't matter whether you read a word, a page, or a sentence, or 2 pages, the fact that you took that time for yourself, that is deeply meaningful, and it helps rewire your brain from being less reactive and being a little bit more proactive. And be very kind with yourself. Like, this will not last forever. I promise you. Like, healthcare in America is like so messed up, but I have never seen the pharma industry, life sciences industry be this like focused on a common goal ever. So we will have some kind of vaccine, and we will figure out how to dose the vaccine to get to some sense of herd immunity so we can safely reopen. In the meantime, with your kids, are they alive? Are they fed? Do they rest? And are they content? Like, that's it. That's it. Once they get back into school, they'll learn. And think of this also, and it's easy for me to say this because I'm in a good headspace right now. And if someone had told me this when I was in a down headspace, I wouldn't want to smack them. So you can smack the phone. It's totally cool. Our kids growing up in such like a changing time that this is going to radically change what education is in the future, what life is in the future for us, the future of work. And we're living in history right now. So just sort of hold on for dear life and focus on surviving. Do not focus on thriving, because no one is thriving right now. Nobody. I have moments of thriving, like mini.
Yes. And we soak in those moments when they show up.
And so soak in those moments and redefine what is success right now. Mm-hmm. What is a good day in quarantine, and try to like hit a couple of those things on the list every day.
Mm-hmm. That's actually something that's so helpful for me, is like I have that list of things I want to do every day, like you shared. Mm-hmm. If I hit like 1 or 2 of them at the beginning of quarantine, I would like beat myself up if I didn't get all 5 things done. Mm-hmm. But now I have that ability to provide grace to myself to be like, it's compounding. And if you do 1 or 2 of these things each day, you're going to be so proud of yourself. But like lessening my own expectation of myself was so important, because that's where I would get so disappointed, or, you know, the self-doubt or the negative self-talk would come up, is because my expectations weren't realistic given the fact that we're in a pandemic.
Also put an autoresponder on your personal email that just says, this is a pandemic. I have young children. Life is crazy. I will respond to your email if it warrants a response. Or that effect, to just sort of absolve yourself of this need to get to inbox 0, at least on one of your inboxes. Like, you can't do that with work, but you can absolutely do that with your personal.
That's such a great tip as well. There was one question that came up in the comments that I want to pull back to before we wrap up, because I want to be mindful of your time. I'm already 8 minutes past, but I hope are you okay? Are you good for a couple minutes? Okay, perfect. So someone asked, how do you go from consuming to creating? And Can you share with us what that looked like for you?
Again, micro moment, whether it's doodling in your notebook or on like a pad of paper that's on your desk. And something I do with Grow, like I can kind of show you what it looks like, is we do what we call squiggle coloring. So like I will just like take some paper and draw squiggles, and then we'll color in like each section, and we'll just,
I love that,
color it in. And because it's so, you know, irreverent, like I don't care about it. That's not art I'm stressed about saving of any kind. Like it can go in the recycling and be created in a new piece of paper and do it again. But that is seriously such a small but impactful activity that you could do with kids and get them involved and get them quiet and engaged for a second. That gives me great comfort. And honestly, it was coloring with Ro that reignited my love for crafting. It got me back into crocheting, needlepoint. So
that's so awesome. So what's ahead that you want to share with everyone who's watching? What is going on with 5 Smart Reads? You are now on Substack, so I know that there's a new way for people to engage and ask questions. Tell us all the things.
So the Substack move happened a lot sooner than I thought it would. I think we get along in that we're both, like, I think very tuned in with our intuition and alternative like therapies and whatnot. So I did an energy healing with an incredible person who...
Was it online or did you go in person?
Over the phone.
That's so amazing.
Not even like on Skype. She didn't need to see me, but she knew what was happening like in my body, that some of the stuff she cleared up, I don't know what possessed me, but like right after that clearing, I like set up my Substack. I started like copying and pasting all my old newsletters over to it and like set up the everything. And like by Monday it was live.
That's amazing.
So I'm really excited about it because there is now a paid daily newsletter that allows me to go a little deeper on an article than I can do on like a small Instagram story frame. You can search for any article, like, because all of them are in the free weekly newsletter. So there was an article that you're like, oh my God, she mentioned something about, you know, oil or the water in the Nile River Delta in Northern Africa, and I wanted to read that. You could just search those terms and it'll come up. And
that's amazing.
It's an easy way for people to go back and find old articles, to find old book recommendations that I recommended. For me to go back, if they ask me a question in DM, I could just point them to the site, or I could point them to the specific newsletter that I talked about it in and have them engage there. And it just allows me to Instagram people. I love it. I prioritize spending time on the platform because I genuinely enjoy it. But I did not love how many hours a day I was spending on Instagram. That having Substack allows me to just sort of own my space and own my content and create in a fun way that is easier than, you know, typing on my phone. So.
I'm finding that too, as we build out the course, it's fun to be like, okay, I can educate and share elsewhere in a deeper way. And that's potentially going to be of greater service to those who are interested in our work, is to just give them that deeper dive. Let's go a little bit further.
Yeah. So the podcast is going to come back in September. Researching new episodes, and September is actually going to have an incredible month-long series on vaccines. So like what a vaccine is and how it works in the
body. I love that.
Like the history of vaccine in terms of drug development overall, and then the business and the philanthropy of vaccine. Contrary to what people believe, vaccines don't make a ton of money, which is why when we hit a global pandemic like this, like shit hits the fan and all of a sudden everyone is developing a vaccine. We don't have a robust antiviral, antibacterial, or antibiotic drug development programs at most companies now. And the startups that start up to start these run out of cash and can't find additional investment as they progress. So that is the whole referendum on healthcare, like a separate one entirely. But like they're not huge money makers for pharma. So when I see people saying, oh, big pharma, this, and I go, you should be pissed off at what they're charging for like certain cancer drugs or rare disease drugs, like, and why they're going after them is because they have huge margins and they can whatever. And that is what should infuriate you, that they are investing their time and energy on those kinds of drug development programs that are going to affect lives, but we're not thinking about the big picture, what's going to affect the whole world.
Yes.
I'm excited to, like, my work experience and talk about that. And as far as
it's the perfect bridge between both worlds. It's so interesting. That's amazing.
And I think, like, as this progresses, I would like, after we, exit out of this company, I would like healthcare to be more my passion, and like investing in content be a little bit more of my career and where I earn most of my salary or revenue, because there's so much in healthcare that I want to be more opportunistic at and look at problems like, how can I help here? Is it as an operator? Is it as an investor? Is it as a communicator? Because like, we need some healthcare influencers.
And I mean, that's what we connected on when we first chatted, was your ability to be that bridge, to bring the information in from pharma, from biotech, like that side of things, into everyday speak, like the podcast will be in September, is so valuable, especially right now.
And I'm excited to do more of that. And I want to do more of that in terms of like my time overall. So building out the business of 5 Smart Reads. Sorry.
Oh, all good.
Ramping up my in that way is going to be important. So when I'm ready to kind of switch my roles in that sense, or switch like where my money comes from, that would be fun.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Hitha, for sharing so much with us. I'm going to share a little bit about my Resilience Masterclass series. Today is the last day to register. We close registration at midnight. It's a 4-week masterclass series, all about how you can be well and lead well together. So over 4 weeks, we're going to be going through my roots of resilience, which are community, impact and identity, self-efficacy, work and wellness. And we're all going to ground ourselves in both our next right steps, but also in this really wild time. And there are 40 of you who are in the program already. And I can't wait to hopefully see more of you in class when we start on August 5th. This is part of my Lessons in Resilience series, which is my IG Live series, which I'm going to be continuing because I think we all need a little bit more education and understanding of how fucking powerful we are and how much we actually can come through. And Hitha is someone who, like, I feel that kinship with. So thank you so much for sharing about what it means to be multi-passionate, how you brought together your 2 worlds, your experiences in being a mother and sharing those words. That was something that resonated so deeply with everybody. So thank you. And for those of you who aren't following one or the other, come check out our worlds. And I think this won't be the last time we do this.
Yes.
Someone said, I think grieving the loss of the old life and trying to be flexible about the new normal is going to be really important in building internal resilience. Absolutely. Like, it's not about going back to normal. It's about forging forward into what our new normal is going to look like.
And give yourself some grace during the period. I don't know what the other side, I don't know what it's going to look like. We're all kind of navigating in this crazy, brave new world. So let's all just be really, really kind with one another.
Amazing. Thank you, everybody, and have the best day. And enjoy New York, Hitha. Bye. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you loved this episode, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. And if you want to follow me, Komal, check me out on Instagram at KOMALMINHAS, or the show at lessonslearned.co. And if you have an idea of a lesson that we should dive into on the show, then slide into our DMs and submit there or on the website, along with any guests you think I should interview and talk all of the things with. As always, I hope that you make some time for you this week and reflect on the lessons you're learning or have learned, and take some time to celebrate all the incredible that is you. Until next time, guys. Bye!